The name matters. The truth matters. The origins of the naming of Powell River. This research delves into the intriguing origins behind the colonial naming of the lake named Powell and the river named Powell, shedding light on their historical significance. The city of Powell River is named after the Powell River Paper Company and is located on the west coast of the province of British Columbia, Canada. In 1878, the Dominion of Canada and the province of British Columbia commissioned a survey company to examine Lot 450. This important survey highlighted Lot 450 in Powell Lake, yet notably excluded Powell River. It shows the importance of Powell Lake. It also shows the river named as Teshkow Creek. From May 4 to October 19, 1878, the Dominion of the Province of British Columbia offered for sale to the public Lot 450. On October 24, 1878, the business Baron R.P. Rithett and Company applied and received a timber lease for what is now known as Lot 450. In 1899, the Industrial Power Company applied for water rights and land on Lot 1901 in the new Westminster district from the Dominion to build a dam for electricity production for a proposed lumber mill. In 1900, the Industrial Power Company withdrew that application. 1901, land at Lot 450 was getting cleared. By 1905, a wood dam was under construction on the river of Powell Lake, and a new paper mill was being built. The Powell River Company, incorporated in 1909, by 1912, was the first manufacturer of newsprint in Western Canada. The Powell River Paper Company aimed to develop a thriving townsite, providing a supportive community for its dedicated employees. The Powell River Paper Company was named after the local river and lake. This represents the earliest documented instance of the name Powell River being used to identify the river. Where did the name of the lake and river come from? Who gave the name to the lake and the river? The name Powell Lake appears as far back as 1878 on the Dominion Survey map. The Gazette mentions tours, land purchases, mining of Powell Lake as far back as 1886. The articles of the new mill being built at Powell Lake date back as early as 1902. Historical documents were researched from all over the world from museums, archives, and online research sites and maps, as well as charts. Over 18,000 pages from 610 relevant documents, dating as far back as 1642. Of that research, there is no direct mention of the river named as Powell River prior to 1901. There is a story of the naming of the river. There are variations of the story of how Powell River got named. Sources make claims of the story from all over the world. Some say it was in 1880 and mention a mighty river, while others say it was 1881 or maybe 1880. All variations of the story have a common theme. The common story is the river and the lake were named by Lieutenant Commander Orabar on the HMS Rocket in honor of his passenger Israel Powell in 1880, or maybe 1881, as they sailed by and noticed the mighty river. Where did this story originate from? In 1906, a book was published by John Thomas Walbrand. British Columbia coast names, their origins and history. Within this book are 7 lines of print that tell the story of how Powell Lake supposedly received its name. It does not reference a mighty river, or does it mention a river at all? It mentions Powell Lake. Every account of how Powell Lake got its name points to the pivotal book published in 1906. This text is essential for understanding the origins of the name and its historical significance. There is no reference to Powell River, only Powell Lake, before 1901. Throughout the decades, this interpretation of the story has gained widespread acceptance as a well-established fact. Is the story, published in 1906, factually accurate or even true? This research critically examines the accepted fact and diligently investigates the source document, aiming to shed new light on the topic. With the original survey, we know in 1878 the lake already was named Powell Lake. The researcher performed an in-depth fact-check of the story first published in 1906, ensuring its accuracy and reliability. Historical documents show that Lieutenant Commander Orabar superseded Commander C.R. Harris' command of the HMS Rocket on January 3, 1879. Two significant historical documents capture the moment when Israel Powell boarded the HMS Rocket on July 1, 1879. The first image captures Israel Powell aboard the HMS Rocket, alongside the esteemed Lieutenant Commander V.B. Orabar. Newly uncovered documents from July 1, 1879, reveal that Israel Powell embarked on the HMS Rocket alongside a photographer, highlighting an intriguing historical connection. While this document is dated April 1, 1879, it is the earliest record confirming Israel Powell's presence on the HMS Rocket, and it should be noted that it is not 1880 or 1881. Notes from historical records reveal that in 1879 the HMS Rocket did not navigate near the waters of Powell Lake, a body of water that had already been named. For effective research, it was crucial to meticulously verify all facts concerning the story from 1880 or 1881. From historical documents of Lieutenant Commander V.B. Orabar, facts were thoroughly verified in the commander notes of HMS Rocket for the years 1880 and 1881, ensuring the accuracy and reliability of the information. Subsequently, the facts were meticulously analyzed in conjunction with Captain Needham's personal logs dating from 1880 to 1881. Both log books underwent a thorough cross-check against the navigation logs of the HMS Rocket for the years 1880 and 1881, ensuring accuracy and reliability in our findings. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that the HMS Rocket in the years 1880 or 1881 never ventured near the west coast near Powell Lake. Nor was Israel Powell on board in 1880 or 1881, as the HMS Rocket was anchored in Esquimalt, or it was sailing to Hawaii. The narrative of the story presented in Captain Walbrand's book has been thoroughly fact-checked and found to be inaccurate. How could Captain Walbrand have overlooked such a significant error? This raises important questions about his decision-making and accountability of accurate historic documentation. The first page of the book includes a vital list of corrections. This update was implemented after printing, ensuring that all important information is accurate. This illustrates that Captain Walbrand sometimes had unreliable information, which led to numerous mistakes. A letter from the UK Archives highlights Captain Walbrand's initiative to seek accurate spellings of place names, underscoring the importance of precision in his historical records. As the commander of a Dominion vessel, Captain Walbrand ought to have been familiar with the place names. At times, he had to rely on stories of namings and spellings. Captain Walbrand was a highly respected gentleman, known for his dedication in consistently submitting logs and notes to the Dominion, ensuring transparency and accountability. For John T. Walbrand, a single error in a year could significantly tarnish his career and undermine his reputation for historical accuracy. Research reveals that in 1879, the HMS Rocket notably did not navigate the west coast of British Columbia with Israel Powell. Historical documents show that Israel Powell was not on the HMS Rocket in 1880 or 1881. If Powell was not on the HMS Rocket in 1880 or 1881, and the HMS Rocket did not sail near Powell Lake, as written in his book, historical documents indicates that Captain Walbrand was, in fact, mistaken, and that the events he recounted simply never took place. In this compelling research on the story, over 610 individual documents and more than 18,000 pages were meticulously analyzed, including journals, maps, diaries, and government records. There are no supporting historical documentation to this story. Where did the place name of Powell Lake come from? As it has been established, it was not as claimed in Captain Walbrand's book. The logbooks of the HMS Rocket and HMS Daring were thoroughly examined to uncover valuable insights that could illuminate our understanding of past events that might be connected. Discovering insights from the logbooks has revealed intriguing historical information that suggests important connections to the naming of Powell Lake. This newfound knowledge could greatly enhance our understanding of the lake's significance and heritage. On board the HMS Rocket in 1878 and 1879 was an able crew member named William Powell. He was aboard at the same year and month as Israel Powell. Able seaman William Powell was as well aboard the HMS Rocket in 1881, the same year as the story. From 1878 to 1881, the HMS Rocket, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Orabar, able seaman William Powell was on board. Could William Powell be the Powell that Captain Walbrand incorrectly identified as Israel Powell in this story? This confusion merits further exploration. Captains did not consistently give geographic namesakes after ships' crews or family members. The practice varied, and those captains who did so had consistent naming themes. If this information holds true, and a place name emerged in 1880 or 1881, it's plausible that it was named in honor of William Powell, which could add significant historical value to the location. 1878 was the year that the name Powell Lake appeared on a survey map of British Columbia. 1 year earlier, in the year 1877, the HMS Daring sailed from Esquimalt on a dispatch to look for a route for the CPR. The HMS Daring was under a new command by Captain John Graham Hamner. Part of the dispatch to locating a port route for the CPR was for the HMS Daring to requisite through Malaspina Strait. Having departed from Esquimalt and Nanaimo, HMS Daring made a strategic stop in Gillies Bay, Texada Island, on August 25, 1877, as it continued its journey northward. This anchorage not only provided a crucial respite but also positioned the ship advantageously for the next leg of its voyage. In the late 1800s, the UK Navy relied heavily on a single chart for navigation, and that chart was chart number 580, a crucial tool for maritime safety and exploration. Using chart number 580, the HMS Daring navigated from Gillies Bay to Malaspina Strait, past Harwood Island then Savory Island, and returned back to the east side of Vancouver Island. In two log books, the Letter Book of John Hamner 1877 and the Navigation Log Book of HMS Daring both show that the HMS Daring was requisite to travel Malaspina Strait. Once on its northern journey to the Skeena River, and again on the return trip south to Esquimalt. On October 2, 1877, the HMS Daring made its significant return to the Malaspina Strait, anchoring at Gillies Bay on Texada Island. With only two possible anchor locations in Malaspina Strait for a potential port and unnamed river, and Stillwater, only one of the locations shows up on a correction on chart 580. And that was Powell Lake. During the HMS Daring's dispatch to the Skeena River, Captain John Hamner gave place names in honor of chart 580 etcher Edward Powell. Edward Point, Powell Point, while the HMS Daring navigated the area close to the lake, it would have diligently searched the area for a CPR port and would have made efforts to discredit the port as feasible. Did Captain Hamner of the HMS Daring name Powell Lake in 1877 to honor Edward Powell? This connection could shed light on the significance of both Edward Powell's legacy and the lake's name. Powell Point and Edward Point are both officially recognized by BC Geographic Place Names, highlighting their significance and ensuring they are acknowledged in our historical heritage. There are indications that Powell Lake was named after Edward Powell. The Powell Islets was somehow mistakenly identified as Powell Lake, leading to potential confusion. Powell Islets is a historically significant location that has been recognized on maritime charts since 1862, highlighting its established presence and importance in navigation. Many earlier charts dating back before 1877 identified the area now known as Powell Islets as Powell Double, reinforcing the historical naming of this location. On chart 580, skillfully etched by Edward Powell and utilized by Captain Richards, these features are compellingly identified as Powell Islets in 1862. How can a well-known and thoroughly charted islet, one that has been documented since before 1862, possibly be misidentified as a lake? This confusion raises important questions about accuracy. Chart 580. Chart 580 stands out, as the most widely referenced chart, skillfully engraved by master chart engraver Edward Powell. Its value is evident, having been employed by Captain Hamner, Captain Nedham, and Lieutenant Commander Orabar. The original chart 580, hand-drawn and etched, by Edward Powell. Used as a navigational aid by Captain Hamner on the HMS Daring in 1877. The original chart 580 features a meticulously hand-drawn correction indicating Powell Lake, enhancing its historic documentation. Chart 580, the same chart number referenced by the BC geographical names. Listing, Powell Lake, mistaken as Powell Islets. In just 8 months after HMS Daring began its journey in 1877, it is probable that it made a significant mark on maritime history by documenting Powell Lake on Chart 580. Within a year, the Dominion surveys Lot 450 in 1878, noting Powell Lake on the official survey. Captain Hamner on the HMS Daring in 1877 consistently gave place names honoring Edward Powell. On Chart 580, a handwritten correction highlights the important addition of Powell Lake, enhancing the chart's accuracy and value. Historical documents show the story of the naming of Powell Lake after Israel Powell can be proven incorrect. Compelling evidence reveals that William Powell served aboard the HMS Rocket during every year that Israel Powell was present, and for the years he was not. Historical evidence demonstrates that HMS Rocket did not operate along the west coast of British Columbia near the river between 1878 and 1881. In contrast, HMS Daring actively patrolled this region. During that time, the HMS Daring navigated Malaspina Strait, and in its dispatch, it honored Edward Powell by naming various locations after him, celebrating his legacy. On Chart 580, there are handwritten corrections adding Powell Lake. In 1878, the Dominion Survey shows the same addition 1 year later of Powell Lake. Historically, substantial evidence and documentation reveal that the narrative surrounding the story is inaccurate. Moreover, it is clear that Powell Lake was, at the very least, not named after Israel Powell. In 1882, Sublieutenant Nedham was Lieutenant Commander Orabar Navigation's officer on the HMS Rocket. In Sublieutenant Nedham's journal on June 10, 1882, Dr. Israel Powell boarded the HMS Rocket on a dispatch. On June 14, the HMS Rocket anchored off Harwood Island, and a party of officers came ashore. A steep trail of 2 miles leads to a lake of nearly 40 miles in length, from which this stream runs to the north and reaches to within about 5 to 10 miles of the tip of Tobaugh Inlet. By a family Indian's report, a party of officers caught a magnificent lot of trout at this lake. Studies indicate that there is not a lake of that size on Harwood Island. However, there is a significant lake on the mainland known as Powell Lake. It is noticed in this entry that they reference a stream, not a mighty river, and a lake, but did not name it. As well, the HMS Rocket is not sailing by, it is at anchor. In the logbook of Lieutenant Commander Uribar, there exists a nearly identical entry that reflects the observations of Sub-Lieutenant Nedham. Journal entry. At a stream of about 2 miles to the southward of Clamon, one bearing from the north end of Harwood Island, Ecker, 3/4 H. A short trail of 2 miles leads to a lake of nearly 40 miles in length, from which this stream runs. To the northward I reaches to within about 5 or 10 miles of the head of Tobaugh Inlet by Indian Reef Front. A party of officers caught a magnificent lot of trout by at this lake during our stay. Lieutenant Commander Uribar, just as in the journal of Captain Nedham, both call it a stream and a lake. From the deck log of the HMS Rocket in 1882, there are interesting historical entries. On June 10, 1882, the HMS Rocket leaves Esquimalt to Burrard Inlet embarked with Lt. Col. Powell, Indian Sup and L. Sproat. June 15, 1882, HMS Rocket is at anchor Harwood Island west of Sleaman Village. June 16, 1882, the HMS Rocket departs Harwood Island. June 28, 1882, in the Clayoquot Sound Kut, whaler is away with the Indian superintendent to visit villages. Israel Powell and Sproat were both at Sleaman, June 15, 1882, and proves that Israel Powell has in fact visited Sleaman. Despite Israel Powell's significant presence on the HMS Rocket, log books and journals do not mention him in his honor for naming a lake or a river. This oversight raises questions about the recognition of Israel Powell's importance while on the HMS Rocket. Amidst the thousands of crucial government and personal correspondences exchanged with Israel Powell, he never once acknowledges the honor of a lake and a river supposedly named after him. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to challenge the narrative and seek out your own information. Your curiosity can lead to the truth. The name matters. The truth matters. The origins of the naming of Powell River. Research for the source document for the naming of Powell River, the river. Powell Lake, the lake. This documentary is based on the document paper and is an independent research document unaffiliated with any government agency, research facility, education center, or political body. This documentary based on the document The Name Matters, The Truth Matters is for educational purposes and not for profit uses. Published by Robin J. Tremblay. Copyright Robin Tremblay, 2024. All rights reserved. Read the full research document. If any of this research is inaccurate, please contact docoldfart@hotmail.com with accurate research. https://www.academia.edu/125896160/the_matters_the_origins_the_naming_the_Powell_river_BC_Canada